For 25 years, he'd been quietly running an antique shop, never talking about his past, never mentioning why he could date any artifact just by touching it, until artificial intelligence discovered he was the archaeologist who had found lost Mayan cities and changed history. Welcome to AI Human Stories. Before we dive into this incredible tale of hidden discovery, academic sacrifice, and how technology uncovered one of archaeology's greatest legends hiding behind a cash register, tell me in the comments what city you're watching from today. And if you believe some treasures are worth more than fame, hit that subscribe button. Henderson's Antiques sat on a tree-lined street in Santa Fe, New Mexico, squeezed between a coffee shop and a used bookstore. The kind of place where tourists browsed for southwestern pottery and locals brought family heirlooms for evaluation. Behind the counter, every day for 25 years, stood Thomas "Tom" Henderson, 67 years old, silver beard, hands that moved over objects with the reverence of someone who understood their stories. He could tell you the age, origin, and cultural significance of virtually anything brought through his door. Tom's like a walking encyclopedia, customers would say. He knows more about Native American artifacts than the museums do. What made Tom unusual wasn't just his knowledge, it was his approach to authenticity. He refused to sell anything he couldn't verify as genuine. His shop contained fewer pieces than competitors, but every item came with detailed provenance documentation and cultural context. Tom had a particular expertise with pre-Columbian artifacts. He could identify Mayan pottery shards, explain Aztec symbolism, and authenticate Olmec sculptures with precision that impressed visiting academics and collectors. But there were things about Tom that didn't quite add up for anyone paying attention. His knowledge was too specific, too detailed for someone who'd learned through collecting. He spoke about ancient civilizations with the intimacy of someone who'd walked through their ruins, not just read about them. More intriguingly, Tom had strong opinions about artifact collection and museum ethics. He'd turn away collectors interested in pieces of questionable ownership, lecture customers about the importance of keeping artifacts in their cultural context, and donate significant fines to appropriate indigenous communities rather than sell them. Some things aren't meant to be owned, Tom would tell disappointed collectors. They're meant to be preserved and respected. When pressed about where he'd learned so much about pre-Columbian cultures, Tom would give vague answers. Spent time in Central America when I was younger. Different kind of work back then. Dr. Maria Santos was a professor of anthropology at the University of New Mexico who'd been buying authentic pieces from Tom's shop for her teaching collection. Over the years, she'd become fascinated by his unusual expertise. Tom didn't just authenticate artifacts, he could explain their ritual significance, identify the specific regions where they were created, and often provide historical context that wasn't found in academic literature. Tom, your knowledge of Mayan ceremonial practices is remarkable, Maria observed after he'd explained the religious significance of a jade figurine. Where did you study Mesoamerican archaeology? Never formally studied it, Tom replied, just picked things up over the years. But Maria wasn't convinced. Tom's insights went beyond casual interest. He could discuss carbon dating techniques, stratigraphic analysis, and archaeological methodology with professional fluency. The breakthrough came when Maria brought Tom a pottery fragment that had been puzzling her graduate students. The piece showed unusual decorative patterns that didn't match known Mayan styles. Tom examined the fragment for several minutes, turning it in the light, running his fingers over the surface. This is from the Mirador Basin, Tom said finally. Probably late pre-classic period, around 300 BCE. The decorative style is unique to a site called El Paraiso. Maria stared at him. Tom, El Paraiso was only discovered 15 years ago. How do you know about decorative styles from a site that's barely been excavated? Tom realized he'd said too much. Read about the excavations. There haven't been any publications about El Paraiso ceramics yet, Maria said carefully. The site is still under preliminary investigation. Tom was quiet for a long moment. Maybe I'm wrong about the identification, but Maria knew he wasn't wrong. His analysis was too specific, too confident. Tom had knowledge that suggested direct familiarity with archaeological sites that few people had access to. The University of New Mexico's Digital Archaeology Lab had developed an AI system for analyzing artifact imagery and identifying cultural patterns. The program could compare unknown pieces to vast databases of documented artifacts and archaeological finds. Professor Santos had been using the system for her research when she thought about Tom's unusual expertise. If the AI could analyze artifacts Maybe it could also analyze the person analyzing them. She uploaded photos of Tom's shop inventory, along with his detailed authentication notes. The AI was designed to identify expertise patterns, methodology signatures, and knowledge markers that indicated professional archaeological training. What the system found was extraordinary. Tom's authentication methods matched those of advanced field archaeologists. His documentation style was consistent with academic publication standards. His knowledge markers suggested direct excavation experience with specific sites. But here's what really caught the AI's attention. Cross-referencing Tom's artifact descriptions with archaeological databases revealed matches to excavation reports from the 1980s and 1990s. Reports authored by Dr. Thomas Henderson, the archaeologist who discovered 3 previously unknown Mayan cities. The AI had identified something incredible. The Quiet Antique Dealer was one of the most significant Mesoamerican archaeologists of the late 20th century. Maria ran the analysis multiple times. Each iteration confirmed the same pattern. Tom Henderson, the antique dealer, was Dr. Thomas Henderson, the archaeologist whose discoveries had rewritten understanding of Mayan civilization. Maria approached Tom carefully. If he was indeed Dr. Henderson, there were probably sensitive reasons why he'd left archaeology and hidden his identity. "Tom, I need to show you something," she said, arriving at the shop with her laptop during a quiet afternoon. She showed him the AI analysis results, the methodology matches, the knowledge patterns, the connection between his authentication notes and published archaeological reports. Tom looked at the screen for a long time without speaking. "Dr. Thomas Henderson," Maria said quietly, "University of Chicago, discovered Yaxmul, Itzamna, and Canal, 3 major Mayan cities that changed everything we knew about pre-classic civilization." Tom nodded slowly. "That was a long time ago. Your work revolutionized Mesoamerican archaeology. You proved that Mayan civilization was far older and more sophisticated than anyone believed. Why did you disappear?" Tom was quiet for several minutes, absently arranging artifacts on his counter, a nervous habit Maria had never noticed before. "Because I realized that discovering civilizations and preserving them are 2 different things," Tom said finally, "and I chose preservation." Tom's story emerged over several conversations. He'd been one of the most promising Mesoamerican archaeologists of his generation, leading expeditions that uncovered evidence of advanced Mayan engineering, astronomy, and urban planning centuries earlier than previously documented. The discoveries were incredible, Tom explained. Yaxmul alone contained architectural innovations that predated similar techniques in other civilizations by 500 years. We were literally rewriting the textbooks. But success in archaeology brought unwanted attention. Tom's discoveries attracted treasure hunters, looters, and unscrupulous collectors who saw ancient cities as sources of valuable artifacts rather than irreplaceable cultural heritage. Within months of publishing our findings, the sites were being systematically looted, Tom continued. People were using my research to target the most valuable pieces. Every paper I published became a treasure map for thieves. The breaking point came when Tom arrived at Canal to find that looters had used explosives to access a sacred burial chamber, destroying irreplaceable murals and artifacts in their haste to extract sellable pieces. "I watched 20 years of careful excavation get undone in a single night," Tom said, his voice heavy with memory. "All because my academic success had turned ancient cities into shopping catalogs for criminals." Tom had tried working with local governments and international heritage organizations to protect the sites, but bureaucracy moved too slowly and money spoke too loudly. The final straw was when my own university started pressuring me to focus on discoveries that would attract media attention and donor interest. They cared more about publicity than preservation. That's when Dr. Thomas Henderson disappeared from academia entirely. "I came to Santa Fe because it's a place where people understand the importance of cultural heritage," Tom continued. "I thought maybe I could do more good protecting artifacts one at a time than discovering sites that would just get destroyed." Tom's approach to antique dealing was unlike anything in the industry. He spent more time researching provenance than most academics, often turning away profitable sales when he couldn't verify legitimate ownership. "Every piece in this shop has a clean history," Tom explained. "No tomb robbing, no site looting, no cultural theft. If I can't prove an artifact was obtained ethically, I won't touch it. Tom had also developed relationships with indigenous communities throughout the Southwest, helping them recover stolen artifacts and providing authentication services for repatriation efforts. I've helped return over 200 pieces to their rightful communities, Tom noted. Sacred objects that had been sitting in private collections, bought and sold like commodities. Maria understood. You found a way to continue your mission without feeding the exploitation system. Exactly. Every authentic piece I authenticate helps people understand that these are cultural treasures, not decorative objects. Every fake I identify keeps money out of looters' pockets. Tom's work represented something unique, archaeological expertise being used to protect cultural heritage rather than extract it. Word of Tom's true identity spread carefully through the archaeological community, not as gossip, but as recognition of someone whose influence had continued long after his public career ended. Pieces that Tom had authenticated over the years were revealed to be extraordinarily significant. His quiet work had helped major museums acquire legitimate artifacts while avoiding problematic pieces that could have caused legal and ethical scandals. Tom's been protecting the integrity of collections for 25 years, noted a museum curator. His authentication work prevented countless institutions from unknowingly participating in cultural theft. The revelation also explained why certain important discoveries had been kept quiet. Tom had been feeding information about new sites to preservation organizations rather than publishing them in journals where looters could find them. He's been doing invisible archaeology, Maria observed. Protecting sites by not publicizing them, preserving culture by keeping it away from exploiters. The University of New Mexico offered Tom opportunities to return to academia, lead expeditions, and resume his research career. He declined. I'm not interested in making discoveries anymore, Tom said. Tom's approach to cultural preservation evolved after his background became known. He developed programs to train other dealers in ethical authentication, created databases of stolen artifacts to help law enforcement, and established scholarship funds for indigenous students studying archaeology. The expertise he brought wasn't just about identifying artifacts, it was about understanding the cultural context that made them meaningful, the legal frameworks that protected them, and the economic forces that threatened them. Cultural preservation isn't just about keeping old things safe, Tom explained to law enforcement officers training in heritage crime. It's about ensuring that cultures can maintain connection to their own histories. Tom's methods helped establish protocols used by customs agencies, museums, and art dealers worldwide for identifying and preventing trafficking in cultural artifacts. His work represented something important, academic knowledge being used to serve communities rather than institutions, expertise employed to protect rather than exploit. The best archaeology is the kind that strengthens cultures instead of extracting from them, Tom noted. Sometimes that means not digging at all. Acta 9, The Living Legacy. Today, Henderson's Antiques serves as an informal museum and educational center, where Tom teaches visitors about pre-Columbian cultures, artifact preservation, and the importance of cultural heritage protection. The AI system that discovered Tom's identity has been adapted for use by cultural heritage organizations worldwide, helping identify stolen artifacts and authenticate pieces for repatriation efforts. Tom's case showed us that expertise takes many forms, noted a digital humanities researcher. Sometimes the most important scholarly work happens outside universities, in ways that directly serve the communities being studied. Tom has written a guide, Ethical Collecting, a former archaeologist's guide to cultural heritage. It's used by collectors, dealers, and law enforcement agencies to understand the difference between legitimate cultural preservation and exploitation. But the work that matters most to Tom still happens in his shop, where he continues educating people about the cultures that created the objects they admire. Every conversation about an artifact is an opportunity to teach someone about the people who made it. Tom reflects, that's more valuable than any academic paper I ever published. The artificial intelligence that uncovered Tom's secret had been designed to identify patterns in expertise and knowledge, but it discovered something more important: how scholarly achievement could be redirected from personal advancement to cultural service. Dr. Thomas Henderson spent 20 years discovering ancient civilizations. He spent 25 more years protecting them. Both roles required the same skills: analysis, research, and deep cultural understanding. But the second career allowed him to serve communities rather than exploit them. The greatest archaeological discovery, Tom tells visitors, is understanding that the past belongs to the people who created it, not the people who dig it up. His influence continues through the authentication protocols, preservation methods, and ethical standards that are now commonplace in museums and collections worldwide. But perhaps most importantly, Tom proved that academic expertise doesn't have to serve academic institutions. Sometimes the most important scholarly work happens in ordinary places, serving ordinary people who want to understand and respect the extraordinary cultures that came before them. Closing. The archaeologist who became an antique dealer represents something important about expertise, ethics, and the purpose of knowledge. Tom's story shows us that artificial intelligence isn't just about identifying hidden patterns or solving mysteries. Sometimes it's about recognizing that the most valuable knowledge is often the kind that serves others rather than advancing careers. And sometimes the greatest discoveries aren't about finding new things, they're about protecting what's already been found, ensuring that cultural treasures survive to educate and inspire future generations rather than disappearing into private collections or black markets. Because the real purpose of archaeology isn't to extract the past, it's to help the present understand and respect the cultures that came before, ensuring that heritage survives and communities remain connected to their histories. Call to action. So here's what I want to know. Have you ever encountered someone whose knowledge seemed to come from direct experience rather than just study? Someone who understood culture, history, or tradition in ways that suggested deep personal connection? Share their stories in the comments below. Tell us about the teachers, preservers, and cultural guardians who help keep important knowledge alive. And if this story moved you, subscribe to AI Human Stories. Because in a world where artificial intelligence can spot patterns of expertise, the most important discoveries aren't about technology. They're about recognizing that the best scholars are often the ones who use their knowledge to serve others, that true expertise includes understanding the responsibility that comes with it, and that sometimes the most important work happens quietly, one conversation at a time. Until next time, remember the past doesn't belong to the people who discover it, it belongs to the people who preserve it.